Hello and welcome to Jessie Bear Book Club. Today we are discussing Mary I, Queen of Sorrow by Alison Weir. This is the second part of this review. Cromwell is such a help to Mary that she starts to think that maybe Cromwell fancies her. And maybe Mary is right. He never remarried after his wife's death. Maybe Lord Cromwell had his eyes set on a princess, even if she was now considered illegitimate. Side note, I am super excited for the second season of Wolf Hall, The Mare and the Light. Who isn't? When Cromwell eventually falls and is executed by Henry, Mary is genuinely sad for him. He was a big help to her. Anna of Cleves and Catherine Howard's rise and fall are very quick in this book. You hardly see them. Though Anna and Mary get on very well, I hope to see their friendship deepen throughout this book, and that didn't really happen, and I felt disappointed. Mary seems to think Catherine Howard is a spoilt idiot child, and that her father, Henry VIII, is a fool for her. But when Catherine Howard's fall comes, Mary feels very sympathetic, especially when Catherine is eventually put to death. Mary thinks her so young and so mistreated by the Howard family. I think there is a bit of "there for the grace of God go I," knowing how badly she was treated by her own family only a few years ago. This segment of the book is when Mary starts to worry about the rise of Protestantism and how it is affecting her younger siblings. Mary also is fully convinced now that Elizabeth is Mark Smeaton's child, even though there is no evidence for this, and Elizabeth looks more like their father Henry VIII than any of Henry's other children. When Mary voices her thoughts that Elizabeth is Smeaton's child, no one will even agree with her, and this is a real flight of fancy on Mary's part. When Mary's father Henry marries Catherine Parr, it smooths out all the family drama, and Mary and Elizabeth are restored to the succession, if not legitimated. However, this segment of the book really highlights how naive Mary is about the world around her and how much she lives in her own head. While being part of Catherine Parr's household, she never realizes that Catherine is Protestant or that the ladies surrounding the Queen are very Protestant. When the King, Henry VIII, dies, Mary is devastated. This is not something I was expecting. I imagined Mary would feel vindicated, that Henry will have to account to Catherine of Aragon in heaven, and that Mary would finally feel like he would get his comeuppance for what he did to herself and her mother. Mary is now living in Chelsea with the former Queen, Catherine Parr, but it's not as peaceful as it was when the King was still alive. Elizabeth is not a child anymore to be mothered and played with like a doll, and Catherine Parr is busy with Thomas Seymour. Not to mention the whole country is turning Protestant, and Mary feels out of place and put out in the cold. But Mary is Catherine of Aragon's daughter, and she is incredibly stubborn. At this point, Mary is very alone and decides to latch on to her faith because she has nothing and no one else, fighting the council and the king at every turn who are trying to outlaw her mass. The Elizabeth and Thomas Seymour scandal doesn't really affect Mary, but it makes her wonder about Elizabeth's personality and how much of Anne Boleyn will be in Elizabeth when she reaches maturity. Mary is sad when Queen Catherine Parr dies, and then Thomas and Edward Seymour are executed by their nephew, the king, but Mary is almost removed from all this drama. She is far more focused on her religion and keeping her mass than any of this court extended family drama. The chapter where Mary arranges with the Emperor to escape to his dominions in Europe so that she won't be prosecuted for her Catholicism only for Mary to chicken out at the very last minute was hard to read, because I wanted to shake her and yell, "Just go! Get on the boat and go!" And the fact that she did chicken out like this means that the Emperor has taken the whole idea of her escape from England off the table, and that has made Mary's situation so much worse. Now, if she is prosecuted for her Catholicism, she has absolutely no escape plan. The stupid woman! No bravery there. Her mother and grandmother would be ashamed of her. The Dudleys' rise to power is very worrying for Mary, because Northumberland is far more determined than the Seymours ever were to make Mary give up her mass, and she really is feeling that she is fighting for her life, and that in a very short amount of time she is going to be accused of treason and thrown in the Tower very soon. The few instances where Mary meets Jane Grey are just awkward, and Jane comes off as a spoilt child, far too strong-willed for her own good. And doesn't that remind you of the teenage girl who was very strong-willed, that kept standing up to her father and putting herself in difficult situations because of her beliefs? But we don't get any comparison in Mary's head, and we don't get enough Jane Grey on page for my liking. I would have liked a bit of an innocent traitor crossover, but we haven't been getting any of that. When Mary finds out that her brother Edward is sick and dying, it is heart-wrenching to read, because Mary really does care about Edward, despite their religious differences. Mary's then flight from Warwick when she finds out that the king is dead shows some real determination. I wish Mary had been this proactive during the rest of her life, especially when it came to her escape to the Emperor's territories. She could have been married and had children by now. Very dynastically important if you are a Tudor. This is the end of the second part of this review of Mary I, Queen of Sorrow by Alison Weir. If you enjoyed this review, please come back next week when we'll be doing the conclusion in part 3. You can also subscribe to this channel. I have lots of historical fiction content, both books and movies, and we talk about other stuff as well. So, until next time, don't burn any heretics alive. Bye!